One of the things that I've noticed about your content that you do really well is sharing your own personal life journey. I'm really interested in the topic of life design. I actually have a book right beside me called Designing Your Life by Burnett and Evans. It's a topic that I think will be increasingly popular over the next few years, just like solopreneurship or anything that becomes like a buzzword. But one of the things that you share really well is how you had the odds stacked against you when you were younger, and you've managed to overcome a lot of adversity to really design what seems like a pretty awesome life. If you were to go and, let's say, create a school, you build some curriculum, and you go to teach the former you or some teens right now about designing the life of your dreams, what are some things that you would want to make sure you teach?
That's a really good question. I would probably focus on soft skills more than hard skills, which sounds a little backwards because they're really hard to teach. But the transformation in my life, because I grew up. It wasn't like miserable by all means. I didn't like grow up in dirt poor third world country. But my parents, my parents migrated from Romania to America. We didn't have a lot of money. My parents spoke broken English. My family was scattered in all kinds of ways, and it was really hard. But there were a lot of things that I learned because I have five brothers, five older brothers and one younger sister. And we all kind of took life on a little differently. And I think the difference was soft skills. Soft skills being finding gratitude, being optimistic in tough seasons, just being wildly optimistic. I think that's one thing that I can definitely anchor in the bucket of like, if I could teach anyone anything, it's finding the good because the good attracts the good. Finding what you're grateful for. And I know it sounds super cliche. It really, really does. It really sounds super cliche, but finding optimism in almost anything, I dare you to try it and not attract more good things in your life. Like, I just dare you to try it. Anything that you're doing, I'm just wildly optimistic about tomorrow and I'm wildly optimistic about today. If I could teach somebody that, how to see the good in their life is just going to get infinitely better, in my opinion, from what I've learned. So I'm less focused on like, oh, you should teach them accounting or you should teach them marketing, or which I do think those things are good. No, I think you should teach somebody how to be freaking grateful and find the good and attract the good. I don't know if that's helpful though.
I don't think there's any wrong answers in life. Everything's helpful. What it is interesting because when we think of the soft skills, so to speak, those transferable skills, you mentioned them being a little bit harder to teach. When you said optimism specifically, it made me think of every now and again, I'll put a song on from, I think his name's Dallas Green of City and Color. And he's got a song called The Eternal Optimist. And it's like a split screen song of like mom, dad, and one's like an eternal pessimist and one's a lot more optimistic. And if I remember, the chorus is, I think I take after my mother, who's the pessimist. And it's this back and forth of like being pessimistic versus optimistic. I do think the really interesting thing and challenge that's really hard but worth talking about is how could we possibly try to teach that?
Yeah, I learned it by surrounding myself with people who are optimistic. So I think you become the average of the five people you spend the most amount of time with. Jim Rohn, quote, love it, still very applicable today. If you spend every day surrounding yourself with athletes, you will be an athlete. If you spend every day surrounding yourself with copywriters, you will be a copywriter, guaranteed, right? You will adapt to your surroundings. If you spend every day surrounding yourself with optimistic, positive people, you will generally become more optimistic. And I genuinely think you will attract more good things in your life. So I just tried to find optimistic people. When I would find somebody that I was like, I like this guy, I like his energy, I like his vibes, I would try and spend more time with that person. And if there was somebody bringing the boat down, I'm like, we gotta throw this Jonah off the boat, right? Old biblical reference. not every Jonah can stay on this boat. You got to go, my man. Like, I don't like hanging out with you. I don't like spending time with you. You know, sometimes you don't have the option, whether it's like a boss or a coworker or something like that. But less teach, more adapt, more like adapt to your surroundings, and you can adjust your surroundings. So find those people, and you probably already have them. You just need to spend more time with them.
Yeah, I was going to say, for the people who are listening who maybe think they don't have those people, we can actually probably take this a little bit pragmatic, because that's a pretty famous quote. People will tweet it out. You might see a poster on Pinterest or something, or even at a school that says that Jim Rohn quote about you being the average of the 5 people you spend your time around. I have watched firsthand many youth struggle with, what exactly does that mean for me? Like, if my sister's a pain in the ass, do I have to cut her out of my life? Do I have to go to a Tony Robbins conference and try and meet 5 millionaires? Like, how do I accomplish this? And I suppose, again, is a very open-ended, there's probably many ways. When you say that, are you talking like in person? Are you saying you try and hang out in a certain community online? Like, what are some, if we can remove our curse of knowledge because we've both accomplished this now, what are some ways that people could go about hanging out with 5 other people?
Honestly, there are very different ways to do this. I started this with books because I was in a situation where, being younger, trying to, like, when I graduated high school, entering into the job market, like, genuinely, I wasn't surrounded by a lot of people that I wanted to be like, right? I wasn't surrounded by those people. I had some decent friends and things like that, but nobody around me was like, oh, I want to be like that guy or anything like that. And so if I couldn't spend my time with them, I could spend my time and attention on books, which is like a distant mentor. Like, I could find somebody who's an author, who has a life, or who's done something that I truly appreciate. And by spending my attention on that person's thinking, their writing, their philosophy, the way they approach life, I become more like that person because I'm setting my attention on that person. A couple great examples are like, John Mark Comer is a great spiritual mentor of mine from afar. I'm a believer in Jesus. I follow him because he's a great believer in Jesus, and he talks about that spiritually. And so I've read all his books because I just feel like he's a great spiritual mentor. Or like, Bob Iger is the CEO of Disney. I don't know if he still is the CEO. He might still be. I think he still is. I think he came back. But he's got this great book called The Ride of a Lifetime. And he talks about how he grew in the ranks at Disney and became the CEO. And he's just got great philosophy, great mindset, great business mind, great family mind. Shoe Dog, same thing. Like Phil Knight, Nike, how he built Nike. Great entrepreneurial mind, great setup to thinking business-wise, philosophy. Terrible for family, but man, wonderful for business. And so it's just like, well, who do I want to be like? I mean, I can go find those books, and don't underestimate sitting down for 5 hours reading somebody's philosophy, reading somebody's thinking. You will become more like them. You will definitely become more like them. Social media groups, that's a great way to do it. Like, a lot of people have communities. If you want to be a video editor, there's communities for video editors. You want to be a millionaire, there's communities for people in the business game. So getting around people like that. But books, I would say, is probably the most accessible. Real life is probably the most impactful, but also the least accessible. So there's accessibility, and then there's like impact, right? So just finding the balance between, I can access this, and this is really impactful to my life. But books are always my go-to.
For me, tapping into like Facebook groups early on, even super informally, because it's like just a group of people who are not necessarily collected, but they're on Twitter or something sharing on a specific topic. Like, podcasting becomes a very informal but still like a little community that you're supporting each other in this journey. And then I moved on to some paid communities too, like specifically 2 that were really helpful for me was the Puttyverse by Emily Wapnick, which is really for multi-potentialites, people that struggle with being multi-passionate and then not being able to organize their thoughts to make like more pragmatic progress. So how do you do that without losing that creative side of yourself. Because let's be honest, in many ways, that doesn't go hand in hand with business unless you partner with someone who can do the more strategic, left brained, so to speak, like planning type stuff. And then smart passive income from Pat Flynn. I was a listener of his podcast for years. And then when he launched a community, I think I was one of the first people in there. And I'm not in there a ton, but those have been huge examples for me online that I think people wouldn't even realize that some of those things do exist. When I think of real life stuff, and I mentioned a lot of youth that I've worked with struggling with this topic, it's on the other side of things where they're trying to figure out what it means to surround yourself with better people. And as you said, some people need to get kicked off the boat. But what if we really care about that person? Like finding the balance of like who you cut out of your life and stuff. Do you have stories or insights on your stance about the kind of the opposite of it, kind of getting rid of negative people?
Yeah, throwing the Jonas off the boat. Yeah, I do. I have I mean, I have tough stories of this too, where truly, I mean, it's been quite a journey because I obviously mentioned my faith in Jesus, and so spending that was really hard for me. Where I was like, okay, but if I want to be like Jesus, had a lot of compassion and he loved people in the hard way, and it took me a while to just kind of get over a cusp of like, okay, but this person is unhealthy in my life. And there's a really good book on this by Pete Scazzero called How to Be an Emotionally Healthy Leader. And he talks about it in this book. But I've had personal instances where when I was on staff at a church for almost 5 years, and I was the marketing director at a church in Atlanta. And this happened quite a bit, honestly, where there would be volunteers on my team or whatever that were just like unhealthy people, just unhealthy, downright. What do? Do you kick that person off the team, even though they're a volunteer? They're trying to get connected to the church. Do you know how sticky that gets? Like all those things. And those people would affect my life too, right? Like I'm leading this team or whatever it is, and they're just a negative person. And, or a family member that's like, you're just a negative person. And at the end of the day, the most beneficial thing was an honest conversation and distance. Honest conversation and distance was definitely the most beneficial thing, where for the people that were maybe on my team or volunteering or just in my ecosystem that weren't necessarily family, but they were in my ecosystem, just an honest conversation of like, hey, listen, I'm not going to lie. The way that you are in rooms and around us and this and that and the woe is me mentality and things like that, it's not good for either of us. Okay. It's not good for you. It's not good for me. I don't genuinely appreciate it. It's not how I am. It's not my perspective in life. And I don't think it's your perspective in life. I think you can do a lot better than that. And just having a tough conversation and say, hey, you might get some distance from me. And if this grows in more that it's impacting the people around you, we might need some distance from you. Right. So I'm letting you know that we're having this conversation now. And there have been times where things kind of stayed the same. And I would tell somebody, you got to go. You got to go. And for family members, same conversation. Hey, I don't appreciate this. You don't appreciate the way that I'm just too positive and you're too negative. So we're just going to take some time. We're just going to be a little distant. I got nothing against you. I just don't want to be around it. And those things are true too. To this day, I still have people where I'm like, yeah, I don't really respond to your texts. Like I've told you, I'm like, we don't vibe in good ways. I have nothing against you as a human. It's just not the way I want to live my life. In fact, I think this mindset kind of broke. I was reading everybody's read this, the Naval Ravikant book, right? Like
the Almanac. I haven't read it.
Yeah. You haven't read it?
No, but I think I could have wrote it.
You probably could.
So
yeah,
I'm very, very, very familiar. I actually own it and I haven't read it yet, but I've read I've read all of his threads at least once or twice.
Well, the second half of the book is where he talks about happiness. So the first half of the book is wealth. The second half of the book is happiness, which I appreciated because I was like, I'm an optimistic person. I kind of want to talk about this. And he talks about, he's like, man, I'm so protective of my happiness at a point, because he's like, because I was miserable, CEO, running multiple companies. I was just miserable, and everybody in Silicon Valley was miserable, and all these things. He's like, it's gotten to the point where if I'm at a party the vibes are just down and I don't like it, I leave. I don't even tell anybody. I just walk out. Or if I do a business deal with somebody and they're negative, I cut them out. Never do a business deal with them ever again. And he's like, you think about it, it weighs on you for like a day, maybe. And then you move on with life, and life is way better for the rest of the time. And so I was like, okay, I probably should be better about this too. And every time I've had a tough conversation with a negative or pessimistic person in my life, it's been really heavy for maybe a day. And then after you have that conversation, you feel like this burden is lifted off you, right? Like where you're like, I don't have to carry this person's negativity anymore. This is good. I'm good with this. So there's not like a playbook or a formula. It really is just finding that distance from the negativity and really increasing your proximity to the positivity.
Yeah, I think when we're younger, every difficult conversation feels like it's the end of the world. And that's probably why it can be tough to step out of that, even when you have like a boyfriend girlfriend situation where you're quite young, so it's not even truly a boyfriend girlfriend situation. Although I will say, I know quite a people who have been together with their high school sweethearts forever. So in fairness, maybe it is. But the idea of like having to break it to them that you want to break up or move to, that you're moving to a new city. You know, I witnessed that happen before, and like actually sometimes it's not even a new city. It's like 10 minutes away. But when you're, 15 years old, that feels like it's the end of the world. Like everything feels like the end of the world. And maybe that's a big part of what just happens as our brains mature. But let's be honest, a lot of adults really struggle with this stuff too, those sort of difficult, fierce conversations. But in my experience too, it's like the advice is usually tell the truth.
It is. Yeah. I really could have just said that. You kind of summed it. I really could have just said that. Yeah. Be honest with the person, right? Like, they were honest with Jonah on the boat. They were like, dude, you suck. I can't believe you did this. We have to throw you off this boat.
Why don't you tell that story, that parable, as it is in a way that people can appreciate? If they aren't a follower of Jesus, they don't necessarily know the story.
Totally. Yeah. So there's this old parable in the Bible. Well, it's a true story. I'm going to tell it as a parable. It's a true story. So there's a story in the Bible where Jonah is asked by God. God is like, Jonah, I want you to go to Nineveh, and I want you to tell the Ninevites about me. Okay, I want you to tell them about me. You need to go do this. And Jonah's like, I hate the Ninevites. They're jerks. They're the worst people. Literally, he's like, they're the worst people. I'm not going to do that. Okay, I'm not going to do that. And so and God's like, dude, I need you to go to Nineveh. And so Jonah runs in the opposite direction. He's like, okay, Nineveh's right. I'm going to go way left. And he goes way left, and he finds his boat where he's going to take to some random island that's not Nineveh, right? Okay, he's like, I'm going to get the crap out of here. He gets on this boat, and God's like, bro, what the heck, man? I just asked you to do something. Like, and so he's on this boat, and this massive storm is now accumulating on this boat, around this boat. And Jonah is like, I did it. It's God. God is like, I can't believe you're not doing what I asked you to do. So God is sending this storm. He's on this boat. And so he brought the storm with him, which is how I see negative, pessimistic people, is they bring the storm with them. Okay. And they rock your boat. This is your boat. Those people had nothing to do with Jonah. And now they're on this boat, and their lives are in danger, and their lives are in turmoil, and they're in the storm because of Jonah. And so the people on the boat, Jonah admits it. He's on the boat. He's like, it's me, guys. I brought the storm, okay? I disobeyed God. It's really not going well for me. It's a bad day, okay? I don't want to go to the Ninevites. And they're like, dude, we have to throw you off this boat. Like, you're not going to sacrifice all the people around you because you're an idiot. And we're just trying to get to where we're going. And so Jonah's like, all right, toss me off. I'll go in. And they're like, we're going to toss you off the boat. And they tossed him off the boat, and he's eaten by a whale. This is a great story. You guys have to go back. He's eaten by a whale, and he lives in this whale for 3 days because he's eaten by this whale. And Jonah's like, I'm gonna die in this whale. This is not good. I'm literally, well, I got what I deserved. I shouldn't have disobeyed God. I'm an idiot. The whale spits him out on shore, and he's on shore now. He's like, oh my God, I'm not dead. And God's like, hey, bro, can you go to the Ninevites? And he's like, yeah, I think I'll go to the Ninevites. So then he goes to the Ninevites. But at the same time, the crux of what I'm talking about in the throwing the Jonahs off your boat is you are the captain of your boat. And this is how I think of myself. I'm like, I'm just trying to drive my boat, and I'm enjoying the sights. I'm like, this is a sick boat. This is a great boat. This is like a yacht. I love my boat. This is a happy boat. I got my family on this boat. I got good friends on this boat. And then Jonah gets on the boat. And we're like, how do we get Jonah off the freaking boat? Because now it's raining and it's dark and it's cloudy and nobody likes Jonah. And you have to throw Jonah off your boat. There's Jonahs on your boat where you're like, everything was good till Jonah got on the boat. And now we got to toss him off the boat. And so I use that all the time. I got to write an email about this. This is it. I'm writing an email about this.
Yeah,
I haven't told this story.
That was in side note mode of my head because I was wondering if you had written one and I missed it. So that would, if you have already, write it again. And yeah, I look forward to seeing it for sure, because I was thinking exactly that, because I think it's a pretty awesome story. You also tell it really well orally. Like, I think a lot of people choose the medium of writing because they're great storytellers and they like sitting behind a laptop and not being on a camera, or maybe they even struggle to tell stories through the use of voice. Is that something that you've always been good at?
I've always enjoyed it for sure, which is weird because I love writing. Right. I love writing. I like being behind the camera. I actually think I'm a better writer than I am on camera simply because I have a better flow of thought. And it challenges me to think better. I'm off the cuff when I'm on camera. I'm like, oh yeah, that was good enough. But when I'm writing, I'm way more like, okay, how does this flow? How would this connect? How would I say this? And so I feel like the excellence level is up. But I have always enjoyed oral communication, talking in front of a camera, all those things. I've never been shy of it, which is partly why I started the YouTube channel in a copywriter space. So like if I talk to copywriters, right? I try and teach copywriting. I try and help people in their copywriting journey. And one of the things I noticed was that not a lot of copywriters like to talk on camera. Like they don't, maybe far and few between. Like when I went to YouTube to try and get copywriting advice, there's like 3 people doing it. Well, there's like 3 people doing it. But if you go on Twitter, there's like 3 million people doing it, which I think is interesting. So I enjoy it. I always think if you can find a market gap that you can genuinely fill, I think there's a big opportunity to help a lot of people. But yeah, I've always enjoyed it.
That's why what I was getting at, I was a bit interested, because I think to be able to go on podcasts, host your own podcast, or create a YouTube channel, or a combination of all of the above, definitely creates a pretty big blue ocean, kind of like your own category opportunity, because it's somewhere that a lot of copywriters aren't, or writers aren't per se. Like, and maybe part of that is kind of Stephen Pressfield's like, turning pro, where it's like you need to be at the typewriter and you need to be writing. So then how do you do both? But obviously you're finding the ability to do both. And I think that'll be a really big opportunity for you. We could talk a little bit about YouTube in a bit, but before we do, I just want to stick with that, like storytelling ability, not necessarily orally or through voice or podcast or YouTube, maybe specific to writing, but just in general storytelling. I saw, I bookmarked it, so I wanted to do some research because I was curious. Whenever I see the word school, it's interesting to me, and it said a storytelling school was a business that someone had built recently or was trying to promote, and their ad kind of caught my eye. When it comes to storytelling, I think it is such a valuable skill. Again, one of those things that might be hard to teach, but not as hard as optimism. So when it comes to storytelling, what are some things that you would try and help people if they wanted to improve that medium?
Oh yeah. Um, well, storytelling's hard. Honestly, great storytelling is hard. I've genuinely read a lot on the topic of storytelling through the likes of people like Ben Settle. Oh my gosh, whoever, I forgot the name of the guy who wrote the book Story Worthy, but that's a great book. But if I had to boil down, if you gave me 60 seconds where you're like, give me your best storytelling tip, there's two tips that have always stuck with me. And it's the coffee test and the two wine test in storytelling. The coffee test is if me and you, like right now, we're sitting down and we're having a cup of coffee together. How would I tell you the story having a cup of coffee like, Justin, you're not going to believe what happened at work today. So I was sitting down and Donna from accounting comes up to me. And Donna's like, hey, you did this. I can't believe you did. And I lost it. And you just tell like if you were sitting down having a cup of coffee with a friend. And so honestly, when I started writing stories via email, I would actually voice dictate them on walks to my phone. I would voice dictate them. And I was like, so me and you earlier before we started recording, we were talking about a story that I just sent via email called "The Worst Podcast I'd Ever Been On." I told that story on a walk to my phone, where I was like, okay, so the other day I was on this podcast and it was 64 freaking minutes long, and I talked for four minutes, right? Whatever. Which I'm not trying to make it all about me. That's not the point of the email, but I told that story into my phone. And then when I got back to the house, I kind of just edited the messiness and the whatever. So that's the coffee test. The coffee test of storytelling being, if I'm sitting down with you having a cup of coffee, how would I tell the story? I'd tell the story out loud. I'd tell it naturally, all those things. And you would even embellish a little bit. If I were to tell you the story, you would embellish a little bit, right? Just make it a little bit more fun. You didn't blow up on Donna. That's a lie. You told Donna very kindly, but in your email, you blew up on Donna.
When you were sharing that, you sounded like Kramer from Seinfeld a little bit with the thematics.
100%. Yeah, exactly. You notch it up a little bit in your writing. You do. Like, it was a 7 out of 10 emotionally and energetic wise, but you make it a 12 out of 10 energy wise because it's just more fun. And so the coffee test, but there's the 2 wine test, which I stole this from Tim Ferriss. The coffee test, I think, came from the guy who wrote Storyworthy. I think his name is Matthew Dix or something like that. But the guy who wrote Storyworthy, he talks about the coffee test, the dinner test, the pub test, whatever you want to call it. And the 2 wine test I stole from Tim Ferriss, where he said you should always tell a story as if you're 2 glasses of wine deep. Okay. Which takes out the corporate drone talk of a story like, we were sitting with this team of people and we were talking about and you just got this boring drone talk where how would you say it if you were 2 glasses of wine deep, not drunk, just slightly inebriated? Okay. Somebody else said this might have been a Gary Halpert thing, who's also a copywriter, where he talks about write drunk, edit sober. He's like, you should write drunk, but you should edit sober. So write drunk, just let it flow, whatever you want to say, and then make sure edit sober a little bit before it sends out. So as far as storytelling goes, coffee test, 2 wine test, stick with that, and you're golden for almost anything.
That's like almost mic drop moment. And I know you said if we had 60 seconds, the good news is we have 60 minutes. So we can go as deep as we want. But it's also important, and this is probably another writing tip, is like finding the balance between dragging on and being somewhat succinct. So that's, if people take away those 2 things, I think it would be huge in terms of the routine of being a writer. When you just mentioned write drunk, edit sober, it made me think of the different cadences of writing and then editing, like, which is a big behind the scenes thing, could be different for any writer. But do you have a cadence and a process to when you write versus when you edit, and the difference between those 2?
Yes, I never do them at the same time. I never do them at the same time. I
You have to
write
sober up
way
first.
more than yeah, yeah. Wasted when I'm writing. Yeah, I write. I will say the cadence of my writing requires very little editing. And I'll explain that. I'll explain that in a sec because I hate editing. It's the it's the worst in the world. But you do need to do it. And so my process is mainly my writing is uh, emails to the people who are on my email list. So it's like from me. So it's personal story every day. Every day is a story, right? I'll tell a story every single day, which makes you better, right? You get better at it over time. Or the only other form of writing is if I'm writing copy for clients, emails, or sales page. Okay. So I want you to take those two perspectives into my writing because a lot of people are writing like fiction novels or books, which I have written a book before. That process was very different. But in my current ecosystem, I focus primarily on the writing and I focus primarily on having fun during the writing. So there are times, there was a season of my life where I would wake up really early and I would write for an hour on the dot. Now I'm like, okay, I'm up at 5, I have my coffee, I do my quiet time with God, and then 6 o'clock, I'm writing from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. And like, I don't do that crap anymore. I don't. Um, my writing is way more fluid nowadays because I figured out I write way better when I want to write the thing. And I've already built the discipline of writing that not one day goes by where I'm not writing something. So I don't need if I don't write at 6 a.m., it doesn't happen. I don't need that anymore because it's going to happen. I already know it's going to happen. And so I really go off. Oh my gosh. Like, so me and you were talking about the Jonah thing earlier. Well, as soon as we get off the call, I'm going to write that email because it's hot on my mind and it's fun. And so I know, okay, as soon as we get off this call, I'm going to take 30 minutes and I'm going to write that email. It's going to be so fun. It might even take 10 minutes because it's so fun. And so the writing is like when I have the energy and the wherewithal to have fun where I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I'll write it into an email right then and there. I'll stop what I'm doing. Almost no matter what I'm doing, I will literally stop and I'll start writing. And I was like, do, 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 and I'm having a ton of fun. And then I do all that for my whole week. So I'll write. I won't even edit anything. I'll just write a week's worth of stuff, whether it's emails or anything like that. And then like on a Friday, like today, before the end of the day, I'll look at all the emails that I've written this week. And I'll pick my 6 or 7 favorite that I'm going to send to my people. Because usually I'll end the week with 15 or 16 emails. And I'll pick my 6 best where I'm like, this was hilarious. This was a good story. This was trash. I don't know why I wrote that, but whatever. So I'll scrap that. And then on Friday, I'll read through them. I'll read through all 6 at the same time. I'll go straight in editing mode and I'll read through them and I'll just tweak it. Oh, I could have said that simpler. Oh, I don't need these 3 lines. It's usually deleting more than anything where it's like you just fluffed yourself up too much. So I'll delete stuff. I don't fix a lot of grammar. My wife makes fun of me for this because she's like, you leave some grammar mistakes in your writing. I was like, yeah, I don't want people to think AI wrote it. So I'll leave a couple tidbits in there, which is really funny. So 2 totally separate processes, 2 very different processes. I hate editing, but you do need to edit. But for my clients, if I write emails for them, I will edit way more. I will be like, I'll write it day 1 and then day 2, I'll come back and I'll read it and I'll edit it. Day 3, I'll come back and I'll edit it some more just to get it really tight and then I'll ship it off to them. But that's a very different like perspective for them, right? My own stuff, I'm like, whatever, I'm being me. I don't know if that's helpful because my process is it's not very like, I try and have more fun than anything.
I already said it once, like, and I wasn't just being kind. Like, everything is helpful. I feel like that's one of the biggest values if people were to ask me about creating this show is that we can genuinely learn from everyone. And that's not to say everyone comes on here and like provides just as much value. And what you said doesn't matter what you say. I say that because I just want to, give you props for being extremely valuable when you share these things, and not having to second guess for yourself whether it's valuable or not moving forward. Because this stuff, I mentioned it earlier too. I said the curse of knowledge. Like I said, if we can remove our curse of knowledge, and what I meant by that was it can be so hard. It's already hard for me with podcasting. I'm not nearly as much of an expert when it comes to writing as you are, but it's hard for me with writing too. Like with all of these topics, as you get better at them, it's hard to remember what the beginner is thinking of. And I do know that one of those things they were thinking of is the volume. And then you hit on it. You said, well, I usually get to 15 or 16 emails in a week, and then I'm bringing it down to 7. So some of those types of questions I think can really help people, like, which is exactly what I was going to ask. How many do you get when you think of these ideas throughout the week? And I feel like the other thing is, if you don't have that, okay, this is my agenda style routine, 6 a.m., I'm getting up and I'm writing right now, then you let it kind of come to you. But how many hours would you say you are writing when it comes to creating your emails in a week?
That's a good question, because some emails take me 10 minutes and some emails take me an hour, depending on the structure. It really boils down to, the more fun I'm having with the email, the less time it takes me. And the less fun I'm having with the email, the more time it takes me. I spend a lot more time on client email. Like if I were to write emails for a client, I am personally on the hook for that person. And I feel a sacred weight of that, of like, I'm not going to phone it in for this client. And I'm going to make sure that the emails I write, it's copywriting, so it's supposed to sell something for this person. And there's a balance between sleazy selling and just really smart, good copywriting. And that takes a lot of crafting. I'm not the master at that by any means, so I obsess over that. So if I'm writing for a client, it could be 15 to 20 hours of writing in 1 week, depending on the workload that I'm doing for them. But for me to write 15 emails for myself, it could be 5 hours. It could be 6 hours. It's not going to take, it's honestly, it's not going to take me that long. And I think it's all gauged on passion. I think it's all gauged on passion and your wherewithal on what you're writing about, right? I really enjoy the topics and the stories that I write about to my personal list. So it's so easy to do it. But yeah, I try not to hold myself to like I need to write 20 hours a week, or I need to write 5 hours a week, because naturally I'm going to spend anywhere between 10 to 20 hours a week already writing. Like I don't need to convince somebody to go play PlayStation, or like, you know what I'm saying? Or like, I really got to convince you to put 20 hours into this Netflix series that you're binging, because you're having fun. Like you're enjoying it. I don't need to convince you to go play tennis for 2 hours. Tennis is fun. I like tennis. Tennis is fun. And so if you're enjoying what you're writing, dude, you could end up putting 10, 15, 20 hours a week easy, just because you're having fun. Yeah, does that answer the question? Yeah, I would say probably anywhere between 10 to 20 hours a week.
Yeah, I feel like yelling Kobe, because anytime I hear that kind of philosophy, one of my favorite videos that I often share whenever I remember to share on socials is Kobe being interviewed about education system in school, and him saying, look, you don't have to tell a kid what to learn, because they're going to find it. Most of the time, we just need to get out of the way. And when it comes to our dreams, we put governors on them. But if we take the governor off, it allows us to just see what we find that's fun. Sure, it could maybe also make money, but either way, all we need to do is kind of get out of the way of the things that we find fun.
Oh, that's a great clip, and I love Kobe. That's a great thought. I'm gonna steal something from that, the governor thing. I gotta steal that. That's going in an email too.
So I was just about to say that I'm gonna put you on the spot, maybe more than ever on a podcast. But you said that you often voice note when you start an email, go for a walk. I know you're not walking. If you need to get up, you can pretend to walk. But if you were to start the email about the Jonah thing, give some real behind the scenes. Like what would the hook point be, or what's your process even when you're voice noting that? Like, do you just start talking? Like right now, if you were to start the email, this might save you a minute later. If you started to write the email right now, how would you start it?
That's a great question. There's a couple ways that I could start it. So already I'm stewing on how I would do it. One, I would probably do it at my keyboard right now because I'm already in a flow, right? But there's a couple ways. One, my favorite way to start an email is called moment of time. Moment of time is where you transport somebody to a moment of time. So now they're in the setting of how you're about to write. So I would start with, I was on a podcast with my friend Justin the other day, and he asked me about blah, which I told him the story of Jonah. And then I would tell the story of Jonah, right? But my emails are all formatted the same way. It's story, lesson, call to action. Story, lesson, call to action. It's the same every single time. So I always tell a story. I teach the lesson of that story, right? A nugget of a lesson. It could be one sentence, but some kind of takeaway to where they read the story and they're like, oh, that was good. That was how I like that. They get the lesson, and then I tie the lesson to either something I'm selling or a resource that's helpful, right? I'm not always selling something, but there are times where it's like, hey, if you like that lesson, you'll definitely like this thing, right? That will help you. Or if you like that lesson, you should read this book, and I'll, attach the book to it or whatever. Like always something that lets them go deeper, right? Because somebody might get the lesson and be like, oh, that was helpful. I wish I had more. And so writing that email live, I literally could start with the moment of time thing, or I might start straight into the Jonah thing where I'm like, you may be a follower of Jesus or not, whatever. There's a story in the Bible. It's a great parable. Check this out. And I'll dive right in. So I'll tee them up for the story, and then I'll tell the parable of Jonah, right? So I would probably go either one. So we'll see what I go with. You'll see which one I go with because I'll write this up. It's either going to be I was on the podcast, which is real life, right? Moment of time. Or it's going to be there's a story in the Bible, parable in the Old Testament about Jonah, and I go straight into it. It's one of those two. But either way, the goal is to tease somebody up that they're about to read a story. That's the whole premise of the first line is you're about to read a story.
I'm looking forward to it, and I have to make sure I catch it because I want to reshare it for you as well. And you've got my juices flowing now in terms of being able to create my own stories. We should just like hit pause and go make some stuff for 20 minutes and come back. It's like, you want to catch that lightning in the bottle, right? And I think that's one of the myths about momentum. I have 1,000 articles and solo episode ideas written down. I'm probably not as effective as you are at in the moment creating and drafting an email yet, but I was in the gym pretty late last night. In between sets, I had 3 different ideas. So quickly voice note in the notes app, boom, 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 just fire those ideas down there. Right now, one of those for me is the ability to use momentum as opposed to motivation for our craft, because that's the big thing I think we're getting at, where it's like all of a sudden your kids are playing at the park and you're supervising them and you have this idea about being a dad and how that relates to a lesson within copywriting, and you're like, oh shit, I got to get that, like it's got to happen now.
Yeah, it's kind of like idea. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Don't want to forget.
I love that.
Man, I had one of those in the middle of the night after my brother had passed away, where I was teaching a lot of youth hip hop, go figure. And it was an idea for a hook, as in like in a song. And I think it was a good idea, but I went back to bed without writing it down, without the voice note, without whatever. And I cannot for the life of me remember what that line was at all. It'll never come to me. It's been 4 years. And I'm like, maybe it will come back to me. Does that ever happen to you?
Yes, it does happen. I Jerry Seinfeld the heck out of this thing. I do keep a notebook and a pen by my bedside. Cause I'll read at night, and before I go to sleep, my project management, it's a piece of paper and a pen. It really is, where tomorrow, here are the 6 things I'm doing. Like, it is dead classic. But I will keep my little bullet journal thing. And if I do wake up or like it's late or something like that, I'll click my little book light on and I'm like, oh, don't forget about blah, blah, blah. And I'll like write it in there. I used to try and do it digitally. But then it would go into this dark hole of just like digital ecosystem where I would never find it unless it's an email idea. If it's an email idea, I have an email folder in my Notion where I keep all my email ideas, and it's just, it goes in there, but pen and paper. Yeah, pen and paper. And if I miss it, it's gone forever. It's in the ecosystem. Somebody else has it. God gave it to a different person to write that idea because it's no longer my idea. That thing is gone.
I always hold pen and paper beside me during episodes as well. This is a little behind the scenes into the podcasting world that can maybe help people in that space. And my process of that has evolved so much as well. I used to also do it digitally. I do so many things that I used to do digitally by paper right now. And part of the reason for that, side note, is that the way that my brain works is I often hop all over the place. And I find that just in the same way that I think Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way, and Morning Pages, she says, your writing will be better because you do morning pages. And a lot of productivity minded folks think it's a waste of time. But her point is, by getting all of that out, you are resting on the page. For me, I need this little notepad, not just for this specific episode, but because if I don't quickly jot down something, then I'll be distracted by it during our interview.
Yeah. Yeah, it is capacity to be able to hold all the like, oh man, that's a great example. I literally did this yesterday because I was like, I have all these projects in my head that I got to get done. And I literally picked up my little journal. I picked up my little bullet journal and I just wrote all the projects down. And it was like 7. And I was like, oh, it felt like 70. And I wrote them down and then I just put them in order of importance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that made the rest of the day so much light. So I totally get that. Very much love The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I do morning pages every morning because of her. Not 3. She talks about 3. I just do 1. I'm like 3. That's going to take me an hour. So just the 1. But I love that system of just like, you just get it out. It'll lighten your brain. It'll help you feel a lot better, a lot more creative.
I interviewed Brendan Kane in a previous episode, and I put him on the spot too. I said, dude, I was like, you wrote the book Hook Point. What should the hook point be for this episode? And he was like, come on, really? I was like, this is like $10,000 out of consulting advice right here. And he said, you probably shouldn't listen to this episode. And that was what he ended up coming up with. But he was very on the spot. And we just got talking about the idea of being able to grab attention quickly. And to bring it back to, you mentioned the subtle difference between your personal writing and how much you do with email and coming up with these ideas on the fly versus kind of the business, it's all a business, I suppose, if it all connects. But
it is
the client service work. When it comes to that part, and you said copywriting, there's a whole other stuff there. You know, you did a beautiful job of summarizing storytelling. Is there anything specifically like those 60 seconds, the 2 tests, or something specific to copywriting versus your personal emails that would be helpful for someone who wants to get into the copywriting world?
Yeah, I mean, here's what I don't need to dive into the ecosystem of how to write copy because there's a whole lot of resources for that, right? You can go visit John Carlton, Gary Halpert, David Ogilvy. You can go read all those books. But I think if you genuinely want to write copy and love it and be in it for the long term, my one piece of advice was you need to have empathy for the market that you write for. For example, if I write for a client, I really only work with clients that are serving people I have empathy for, really like. Because if you have no empathy in your writing, if you don't feel for the person that you're writing for, if you don't actually absorb the problem that this product solves for them, or you don't absorb the things that they're going through in life, if you don't understand those things, if those things don't come out in your writing, 1, it's not helpful to them, and 2, it's not fun for you, right? And so I actually, this is hilarious. I just wrote an email about this, and it's coming out next week, where I used to feel like all my curiosities in life were bringing me down. In fact, people would make me feel bad. This is a true story. People would make me feel bad, my friends included, about always being curious about something else. They were always like, man, you're all over the place. Like, you're scattered. You like this, you like this, you like that. Just pick something. And they would make me feel bad about that. Like, it would be like, I like sneakers. I love sneaker culture. I like collecting sneakers. I like sneaker design. I also like tennis. I like running. I like pour over coffee. I'm obsessed with pour over coffee. I like watches. I like the way rotors and mechanisms work in watches. I like all those things. And so I would write for the markets that I like. I would, because I have empathy for those people, because I see myself as one of those people. So like, I wouldn't write copy for a roofing company. That's an example of somebody who did reach out and they were like, hey, I got this roofing company. Like, we need some email. And I'm like, I'm good. And they're like, well, oh, it's like this commissions and blah, blah, blah. I was like, I would suck at it, bro. And you would hate my emails because I don't care about roofing things. Like, I just don't care. I have zero empathy for the market of roofing people. Okay. No offense. If you're listening, you're the roofing guy. No offense. No offense. But having empathy for the people that you write for and the products that you write for, probably the best copywriting tip I can give you is just actually care. Like, actually care. If you do that, you'll be far better than almost anybody else doing it.
Be able to put yourself in their shoes a little bit.
Yeah.
Have you read Barbara Scher's Refuse to Choose?
Mm-mm.
It's a sneaky good book. She's one of my heroes / mentors from afar, as you put it earlier, that I wish I could have interviewed 1,000 times over, because that whole book is about those of us who struggle with our friends and family not getting us because we have so many different curiosities, and how to pragmatically still make your life a success. You figured it out without her help. I struggled until getting her help. But in terms of figuring it out for you, how did you start to be able to not just pursue too many curiosities and get focused to make actual progress and be able to, friggin' pay the bills, let alone become wealthy?
Yeah, honestly, I bumbled my way into it. If I'm being honest, I did not figure it out eloquently or smoothly or anything like that. In fact, to this day, I still have people who poke at me. But I think the thing that got me was finding the web that connected them all together, finding the thing that allowed me to be curious and still pay the bills, right? And still drive it, which in my case is email marketing, advertising, things like that. So I do all those things. And in those things, I can genuinely talk about all of those things and tie them back to my one thing, right? I teach copywriting, so I'll talk about copywriting, and I'll take anything that I'm curious about and I will tie it to a copywriting lesson, right? Just like you tied Kobe to a philosophical lesson that we were talking about. You could do that with anything. And so in my emails, I may talk one day about the Spider-Man movie that I watched, because Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse was incredible. And I watched it with my kids and I thought it was super fun. And I thought the design was cool. Well, I turned it into an email about copywriting. I'm studying watches. Well, I can turn the mechanisms and the way that they're all connected into an email about copywriting. Okay. I can turn any one of my interests, running. Oh my gosh, running is so easy to turn into copywriting. Longevity, distance, endurance, all of those things. So any topic that I'm interested in, I can turn it into an email, which is kind of like the central of the web. I found one thing that's like, this one thing can talk about all these things. Same thing with like photography. If you're a photographer and you enjoy coffee and you enjoy video games and you enjoy whatever else you're doing, we'll go take pictures of all those things, right? You find the central piece that lets you connect to any bit of curiosity, and it becomes infinitely more fun and infinitely more valuable because you can connect the dots between all kinds of different ecosystems and worlds, which makes them more interesting. It just makes them far more interesting. In fact, Naval talks about this in his book. Again, that's twice in one podcast we're hitting Naval. He talks about it. He's like, If I were to tell you a story about a bear, it would be interesting. If I were to tell you a story about a unicycle, it would be kind of interesting. If I were to tell you a story about a bear riding a unicycle, it would become far more interesting. And he's like, so your ability to connect two different worlds together makes your world far more interesting. And so that kind of unlocked it for me, where I was like, oh, my curiosities are a strength, not a weakness. I can connect worlds that nobody else is connecting because they don't care. I care. Going back to empathy, I care. And so now this email or this writing or whatever I'm doing, or whatever you're doing, becomes far more interesting when you have the like central way to connect things.
What's super cool about that too is AI can't take it away, at least in our lifetimes and our kids' lifetimes. It's definitely a human ability for at least the very, very foreseeable future. There's a book that I used to love opening up and just reading a couple pages of every now and again. And it was called Right Brain Rising, I believe. And it's like, I think the 5 things that AI can never take away from us, basically. And it was made quite a while ago, like maybe 15, 20 years ago that this came out.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it's really cool to think like, sometimes you're almost too ahead of the curve. Like that was the stuff I was so interested in back then, creating innovators, creative confidence, right brain rising, all of these things. And one of the big things in there was the idea of being a synthesis, a conductor, someone who can bring together so many different ideas. And that's exactly what you were talking about. It's what Barbara Scheer talks about in Refuse to Choose. Emily Wapnick's Puttyverse, that's what it's all about. How do you find your personal through line? So what's funny is exactly how you bumbled into it. You were fortunate to bumble into that exact formula, basically. And the other book, we've done a lot of books today. We should do an affiliate link.
Yeah.
The One Thing, which is a really popular book.
Yeah, it's
But what's so funny about that book, and I just referenced this in the book that I'm writing right now. I wrote this yesterday. What people don't know, like, what do you know what his one thing was? Do you remember from that book?
No, I read it 10 years ago. What was his one thing? Obviously, he's Gary Keller, so Keller Williams, like all that stuff. What was his one thing?
This is what's so fun, right? I've done this with a few people now. It's like, oh, I love that book. I've read it. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to be a little bit of a pain in the ass and put you on the spot for a second for a purpose. His one thing was teaching.
Well, that makes sense. Oh, it connects to everything.
Right. And so I think when we see the title of that book, we see the cover matter, we see the back page, we get stressed like, oh, shit, I don't know my one thing.
Yeah. What am I going to do?
Well, his one thing was teaching. Even the guy who wrote the book, his one thing was teaching. So when I read that book, and it was actually, maybe it sticks out a bit because I was listening to it on a long commute and I just, I hadn't read it in a while and I listened to it a second time. And when he said that, I was like, damn. I was like, I think we have the same one thing.
I love that. It's funny you reminded me that I literally remember one thing from that book. The book, One Thing. I literally only remember one thing from that book because I read it so long ago, where he talks about, do you remember this? The glass balls and the rubber balls?
So this is awesome that you say that because I didn't remember that that's where I learned that. I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
That's where I learned it. I read that book. Maybe he stole it from somebody else, but he talks about that. And that enlightened me a ton, which for anybody who hasn't read the book, his idea is like life is like juggling and you have all these things that you have to juggle. And some of the things that you're juggling are rubber balls and some of them are glass balls, meaning if you drop a rubber ball, it's probably going to float away into the corner. It might get dusty for a little while and you can just pick it back up later. But if you drop a glass ball in your life, it cracks and it gets way harder to fix a cracked glass ball, i.e. the glass balls in your life are like family relationships, your health, right? Those are kind of probably your 2 main glass balls. Maybe your spiritual life, if that's who you are. And your rubber balls are things like your career, your car, like things that are just like, they can be fixed, right? Even if you drop your career, you can fix your career, right? Where you can't really, it's much harder to fix your health and things like that. So I thought, yeah, that one thing out of the book that stuck with me for a long time where I was like, okay, don't drop the glass balls. if anything, don't drop those. So I'm glad that you reminded me his one thing, because I was like, I genuinely, I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's that glass balls, rubber balls thing is something that I've often thought of. So I appreciate you reminding me that that's what that came from. Um, and what's cool is that we kind of started this conversation talking about some of the things that lead to protecting those glass balls, right? Optimism and gratitude and those transferable soft skills. Those are the most valuable things that lead to wellness, relationships, and health. But I feel like one of the rubber balls, let's stick with like business, entrepreneurship, or careers. People listening to this, I know I was in their shoes when I first started listening to podcasts. They're like, yeah, but tell me how to make money. Tell me how to figure out my like career path. If I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to do what you guys are doing. Like, what are some of those secrets? I'm a big believer that A, we need to figure it out ourselves, and B, it's different for everyone because we keep learning different things and none of us are going to have answers. You used the word bumble. I think that's a perfect way of explaining it. Anyone who says otherwise, I think, is kind of BS or trying to sell you something. However, there are probably some things that we can share that might help someone. Let's say they want to become a copywriter. What are some tips that you would give them to maybe learn how to pursue that path for themselves?
Yeah, as far as like avoiding all the stumbling into entrepreneurship, I don't think there's a way to avoid the stumbling, because you said it. I think everybody has to find it for themselves. I discovered copywriting. I didn't like, okay, I'm going to be a copywriter. Like, that's not how that worked. In fact, I spent 10 years trying everything but copywriting. My entire 20s was, I'm going to try photography. This sounds fun. I'm going to try videography. This sounds fun. I'm going to build websites for people. This sounds pretty fun. I'm going to design logos for people. This is pretty cool. Like, I tried all kinds of stuff. And I came down on copywriting because I stole this concept from this guy named Eddie Kwan on Twitter. He's explained it the best, where you stumble into true entrepreneurship when you find your unfair advantage. Your unfair advantage is the thing that doesn't feel like work, but it is work, right? It's, to me, that I didn't find that until I was doing copywriting. Where when I did website design, it felt like work. It was a little bit of fun. I liked it. I liked building websites. Like, it was cool, but it did feel like work. It did feel like I was putting in the hours. I wasn't like hyped up to do it by any means. Same thing with logo design. Like, I had fun doing it, but that, in that case, I wasn't that great. And like, I enjoyed it. I was like, oh, this is fun, but I wasn't really, really good. And so your unfair advantage is when talent meets joy. When talent meets joy, and you're like, hold on, not only am I having fun, I'm actually pretty freaking good. Like, naturally, you're not going to be the best in the world, but you will have some kind of natural inclination that you're like, I'm actually pretty good at this. And people will tell you, this is not you told yourself. This is somebody's like, hey, that was a great email, or that was a great sales page, or like, that was a cool video. Like, I actually like that. People will tell you. And when you find the thing that talent meets joy, you're pretty good, like good enough that people are willing to pay you for it, and you're having fun, that is an unfair advantage. And it just takes a long time to find your unfair advantage. Some people like to idolize the Steve Jobs of the world and the Bob Igers of the world and the Phil Knights of the world, who like kind of just stumbled into it in their early 20s. Well, that's 3 people, right? Like, that's not going to happen to you. Like, I didn't find copywriting until I was 29, and I'm 31. I was 29. I spent 10 years trying other stuff, from 19 to 29, trying other stuff for like 2 years at a time. And then I landed on this copy thing, and I was like, yo, this is fun. And people like pay me for it. They want it. So I think it's more of a discovery process than it is like, okay, I'm going to be a copywriter. Well, do you like it? No, I hate it. I would quit. Or I'm going to be a copywriter. Yeah, I love it. Are you any good? No. Oh, I would probably quit.
Yeah.
I try to find something else.
Yeah.
which might be alternative advice. Some people are like, "Oh, stick it out." I'm like, "Nah, quit early. Try something else."
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the ability to, hey, you brought up Naval twice. I'll only bring him up once, but that'll make three. It's kind of fun when things happen in threes. I know that one of the things he talked about in his thread on wealth was, well, two things that really apply here was one, creating your unfair advantage by combining mediums. So your ability to be a good writer, in your case, adding YouTube, as we talked about earlier, actually. And once you start combining things like the unicycle and the bear, when it comes to your own craft, you can get a competitive advantage a lot sooner and almost in a guarantee as well if you add three things, because I think Tim Ferriss talks about this as well. If you get to being the top 25% in three mediums, those are going to combine to make you a unicorn versus trying to become Joe Rogan of podcasting. If you add two other mediums, you find how to combine those appropriately that make sense in the market, and you keep going with enough time horizon, you're going to be successful. But in that same paragraph, he talks about how hard it is for people who are halfway up the mountain or 7/8 of the way up the mountain to walk all the way back down and go to another mountain, but how much quicker it would be if you could just slide down that mountain and go find the right mountain. You know, people talk about putting a ladder up against the wrong house and all these different stories, but I do feel like when people haven't heard that advice or feel like they've been given permission to just burn that idea and go do another one, that it can really help people out a lot.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good example. Somebody taught me that lesson. I was playing a game of poker at somebody's house one night. We were just hanging out playing poker, and it literally happened. I did not have a great hand, but I kept betting against the other guy at the table, trying to bluff my way out. And we finished the hand. He won because he didn't bluff out and he had a much better hand. And I lost quite a bit of money. And the guy sitting next to me was like, investment fallacy. What an idiot. And I was like, what? And he's like, you kept putting in because of how much you had already put in. Like you were already $80 in, so you might as well be $100 in. So you might as well be 150 in. And it's hard to pull out because you've already invested. So you don't want to opt out to the zero unless you lose. And I remember sitting next to him thinking that, and I was like, investment fallacy. I'm going to steal that. I gotta remember that. And that helped me quit things sooner than later when it was like, I'm $50 in. I really don't want to be $500 in. Right? Like you don't want to be 2 years down the line and you're like, it's not my thing. I'd rather be 2 months down the line and figure it out. But some people are at that 2-month mark and they're like, oh, I've got 2 months in. I'm like, so pivot. And it took me way too long to learn that. I think it comes with age though. Like you get older, you hit your 30s and you're like, I'm not going to be here forever. Oh God. And it really hits. So I'm glad that you said that because that reminded me of that guy that literally called me out in a poker match. Investment fallacy. I was like, dang it.
That's a good one. And last night I referenced being in the gym and jotting 3 things down. I don't know that I could remember all 3, but when you said that, I remembered one of them was the 3 Ps: when to push, pull back, or pivot. And
oh, that's good.
That's what we're kind of like. I say that because it can be so hard to personally reflect on these things, right? And yeah, sometimes we need to do one of those 3 things. I can't think of a fourth, so I think it's either one of those 3. But in terms of the investment fallacy, it makes us push when we maybe should have pivoted or pulled back a bit.
Yeah. Have you read The Dip by Seth Godin?
You know, I've read The Icarus Deception. I've read All Marketers Are Liars. I've read The Tribe. I've read all of them. And I feel like The Dip might have missed me.
The Dip, it's literally 100 pages on when quitting is smart. So it's literally an entire book. So he called The Dip, and gosh, we really got to put an affiliate for all these books. But he talks about the dip in any journey where whenever you start a journey, like the early beginning stages feels like you're riding high and you're like, oh, this can't get any better. And then you get to the dip where things get hard, where like if you really want to get to the next phase of this journey, it takes so much hard work. It feels like you were riding at 100 miles an hour and now you're making progress at 20 miles an hour, and it just gets very hard. And he basically balances around when it's smart to go through the dip and actually work your way through that dip season to get to the other side of excellence and enjoyment and like prosperity and things like that. And when it's smart to see a dip and be like, nah,
I'm gonna take a different
nah.
bridge.
Yeah. It's like, this is a bad dip. This seems nasty. It's dark in there. I don't feel like it. Like, and it's just a really good book of like when to go through the dip and when to just walk away. So
Because he does such a good job of content creation on steroids, I have read the concept from him a number of times. In fact, I did read the practice as well, and I think he talks about the dip
such a good
in the
book.
practice. So, yeah, that's exactly it. He's one of those books, Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now, where it's like, I don't need to read that. In fact, I don't suggest anybody should read those beginning to end. It's like, but have them for the rest of your life and look at them even once a day for 2 minutes before you do your morning pages. It'll probably serve you really well. And on this show, it's always like we get to this time where I know a mic drop moment's coming. We're going to have to wrap, and I still have all of these things that we could have talked about. But one thing that would be kind of a nice way of putting a bow on this one, I think, is you talking about the practice, talking about the dip, and you pushing through and figuring out your process, and how we've both been thinking of these ideas to steal throughout the whole episode. You've got me really
Yeah.
personally motivated to go write to my newsletter audience more. It's something that I fall into that category of. There's 180 people sitting there, and every now and again I'll write them, but I just don't do it often enough. I guess let me just leave it open-ended because I'd be super curious what you think. What should I do?
I would write to your people every day. I would write every single day to those people. And for a couple reasons. One, it forces you to document your journey. And golly, is it so powerful when you have to think about the journey you're going through. When you have to sit there and, what story am I going to tell today? Well, it gives you an opportunity to reflect on what you went through today. And what lesson am I going to teach on that story? Well, it's going to teach you a lesson. The best way to learn is to teach, right? We know that, right? Teaching's your one thing. It was Gary Keller's one thing. If it's going to be your thing, we all know that if you want to learn something, you need to teach it. And documenting your journey every single day to your people not only keeps that journey fluid for you, but it teaches other people to learn from you, right? You want to teach them. Even if it's a nugget a day, like if you're on Seth Godin's list, sometimes it's 2 sentences, sometimes it's 4 paragraphs, sometimes it's 1,000 words. But at the end of the day, you're on the hook. If you put yourself, again, another Seth Godin thing, putting yourself on the hook. If you are on the hook, and Seth Godin sends a daily email. He's done it for 20 years, 20 freaking years. He put himself on the hook. And he says, the reason I do it is because I don't have to ask myself, should I send an email tomorrow? He says, what should I send tomorrow? And it relieves so much mental capacity of should I. You don't say, should I eat a meal today? You know you're going to eat a meal. You think about, what should I eat? And that's just a different concept. And so you have 180 people on your list, and you don't have to monetize or turn it into a business. You can if you want to. I don't blame either way. I do. But at the end of the day, you could just share your journey one email at a time. Hey, I interviewed this guy today. Here's the story I learned. Here's the lesson, because you're interviewing people all the time. And here, hey, here's a great story that he pointed out. Here's a lesson from it. And here's a lesson that I learned running the podcast. I made a huge mistake. I did this thing, blah, 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 and I'll probably never do it again. Anywho, I hope it was helpful. See you tomorrow. And you're going to get people that unsubscribe who are like, I don't want to get this. But then you're going to get people who are like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I look forward to your stories every single day. It means a lot to me. I learned so much from you. And they're just super fans. And I'm a big fan of email because it's infinitely scalable. So this one email that you write to 180 people, well, in 10 years, maybe there's 180,000 people on the list, and it's still one email. Like it doesn't take more effort to affect 180,000 people than it does 180 people. So it's forever scalable. So you can forever tell the stories. Anywho, I could rant on that for a long, long time. But my encouragement to you and to everyone would be, please document your journey. Share it with 10 people, share it with 100 people. Just document your journey. People want to know what you're going through. They want to know that there's other people going through the same stuff they're going through. They just want to know that. So that would be my encouragement.
We won't rant too long because I know we want to leave people wanting more. But for shits and giggles, can you think of what the objections would be to people listening right now? The resistance.
Oh, I can tell you right now. Yeah. I have a small list. Nobody wants to read my stuff. I don't have time to write. What else? I mean, I can give you the million objections that I hear from everybody. They tell me all the time. I'm going to spam people. They're going to unsubscribe. Would you like to go through every objection? We can kill them all right now.
I think that's great. I just, I knew that you knew what I would be thinking of is the small list piece, I think is the main one for me. I don't know what it is. There's some kind of something that you should write about there again too, because I think the other thing for me as well, the only other thing that I could personally add would maybe be niche, like being so broad and always wanting to figure out, well, okay, maybe I'm not monetizing it, but what is that through line? And I feel like I do feel super empowered from this episode to just like, I literally jotted down like 7 things from this episode alone. So that could be next week's, all of their emails. I guess my big thing is, and this is where the small list people come in, wanting to spend time growing the list, like the chicken and the egg, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, once I have 1,000 people, then I can start sending more. I'll have more to say, which doesn't make any sense.
No. What is Joe Rogan's niche? He has no niche. He interviews everybody all the time. His niche is that he's a human and he's having cool conversations with a lot of different people. That's his niche.
And he's a writer.
Yeah, he's a good writer too. But at the end of the day, it really is, you can find the central thing that's like, okay, I'm exploring all these topics through podcasting. Okay, you can use podcast. I'm exploring all these topics through podcasting. Here's a bunch of stuff that I've learned. You could talk about your podcasting journey. You could talk about people that you interviewed on the podcast. You could talk about balancing family life with podcasting, with a day job, right? Like all you need is one tiny, tiny connection that tells the audience who needs to read this. And it could be podcasters. You need that one tiny thing. And that kind of anchors it. And then from there, you could talk about anything. You can connect it to anything. Like my one tiny anchor is copywriting. If you have any touch in the copywriting world, you would probably like my emails. But like the Jonah parable, the Jonah story from the Bible, what does that have to do with copywriting? Nothing. But I'm going to make it be something about copy. Or my kids, what do they care about? What does that have to do with copywriting? Nothing. But I'm going to turn it into an email for copywriters. And so if your journey is like, well, right now, my main curiosity is podcasting, you can say, hey, I'm a podcaster. I'm documenting my journey as a podcaster. And you could literally tell a story about your family, kids, day job, your workout routine, your daily routine, the 7 notes you took. It doesn't matter. You just tie it very slightly to podcasting, just like Joe Rogan does. He's a podcaster and he ties everything to his conversations. And I would start from zero. Everybody does.
I'm excited to get off. I mean, again, we could talk for hours, but I'm excited to move on to creating mode because I've been inspired and motivated by this conversation as much as ever before, because I do come about naturally a little bit when it comes to writing. Like when I was in the 3rd grade, they'd send me to these specialized writing courses, stuff like this for young authors and different things. And I was the person who gave up on that because I was like, oh, kind of thinking like, someone who wants to be Taylor Swift right now, how it's like, yeah, well, that's like, I'm not that good. And like teachers and maybe even my parents, I don't really remember, but a lot of people made me feel like writing was only for like R.L. Stein. Like it wasn't something that I could do, and then eventually J.K. Rowling, like it wasn't for me. I had to go do a traditional kind of job. And now I'm looking at this shit and I'm like, damn, writing would have been a really good thing to stick with. And the last email I wrote, you'll get a kick out of this and probably slap me in the head, but the last email I wrote, two people emailed me afterwards and asked one asked what copywriting course, and the other one asked if I took a copywriting course. And I was like, no, I just wrote you an email. So I guess I'm okay at it.
That.
I screenshotted them because I was like, I could share that as another piece of content someday.
That's such a good email.
And I don't remember what the topic was. I'll have to look at it. I'll share it with you because whatever it was, it spoke to people. And the way she put it was that I was continually dragged through the whole email and couldn't stop reading. And so I need to get back to doing that myself. I appreciate you giving me that kick in the butt to do so. Yeah, like you said, we could talk forever. I had jotted down some ideas about, building your path to freedom and wealth. You mentioned balancing family life with entrepreneurship, growing an email list, homeschooling kids, the whole topic of learning and education, and then kind of success fundamentals in general, and your own journey of building on YouTube. Those are things that we didn't really dive too deep into that I had jotted down previously. Before we do the like quick rapid fire questions and log off here on those topics or otherwise, is there anything that you would hate to be like, I failed to mention, or that you wouldn't want to forget saying until the next time we get to collaborate?
No, not necessarily. We started off with the optimistic thing. And if we were to talk about anything on this podcast, it would be that. It would be enjoy your life, be optimistic, surround yourself with positive people. Your life will be so much better. Do the things you love to do.
Full circle moment. So in terms of the rapid fire questions, the first one is, what's one thing that you are learning right now?
Copywriting.
Boom, going deep.
I'm going masterful. I'm nobody's stopping. Let's go.
On that note, let's do one last name drop. If people listening are like, what the hell is copywriting? I want to go check it out for myself. I think I might be interested in it. What is the, there's so many, I know that. So this might be the hardest question of the entire episode. If you only did pick one thing, one book for them to go read, or one resource or one reference, what would it be?
Kick-Ass Copywriting by John Carlton.
Cool. And the second one, I think you maybe just touched on it as well, but who knows, it might come across a bit differently. But if you were to only leave one piece of advice for the next generation, what would that be?
Do what you love.
And then finally, if you take the mic, you're the host, you ask me a question, could be on these topics, anything else that comes to mind, I promise I'll make a email newsletter out of it. What's a question that comes to mind?
What's stopping you today from doing what you love?
Nothing now. There was someone had asked a question this morning on Twitter X about whether you would do the thing you're doing that you love, as you just said in that advice, if you made no money from it. And I always find that a very interesting question, because my answer when it comes to podcasting, when it comes to writing, is 1000% yes.
1000%.
And then there's that huge but in the middle that creeps in my mind, being like, you got to pay the bills. You got to be able to put gas in your car or charge it if it's electric. And I feel like my mindset is pretty strong, and it gets a little bit better each day. But I do feel like figuring out the monetization, the elements of like, okay, but how do we turn this into a real business? Because if I don't, I can't serve people well. And that is my big challenge for the rest of 2024, to sort that piece out. I had to build the foundation first. You mentioned it earlier too, the idea of wellness and the glass balls. I feel like those are all in a pretty good spot, with that one rubber ball of how do we make money doing this thing without it taking 20 years? Can we make it take 2 years?
Which is a good thing. You do want to get paid for what you do. I think that's really great to get paid for the service that you provide people. I do not discriminate that at all. I have a business doing it. Everybody should get paid for, if you're really good and you really love it, and you should get paid.
And there's something there, because that's my whole, when people will often ask me why I do it, that is my why, because I want everyone to be able to do what they love and get paid for it. And so figuring out that is a friggin', it's like Elon trying to go to Mars. It might be harder than Elon figuring out how to go to Mars. But if we can figure it out, man, what a great problem to be working on. So
You will help a lot of people.
mm-hmm. Well, thank you for being a huge part of it, because having great guests makes that a whole lot easier. So I really appreciate your time. And of course, the last question is always, I like asking this one: why and where can people go to find your work?
Why can they go find my work? Because I think it's awesome.
Oh,
It's if you are a copywriter, yeah. I mean, I genuinely pour my heart and soul to it. So if you are a copywriter, you should go to my website, which is alindragu.com, ALINDRAGU.com. I know it's spelled weird. I'm Romanian. Sorry. And you can go subscribe to my list, and there's a free gift for you. If you are not a copywriter, it will probably not be super helpful for you. I mean, you might enjoy the stories, but either way. So yeah, I pour my heart and soul into it. And so I hope it's really helpful. And where can they find you, my brother?
hopefully they know that anywhere that Just Keep Learning is available.
I love it. Fantastic. I love both ways. It's got to go both ways.
For sure. No, your emails are great too. And I think, as you were saying that, I was thinking a lot of people might not even know in the general public what copywriting means, but they know what storytelling is. So if they are interested in storytelling or any adjacent category like business, entrepreneurship, and then frankly, I think people can get a lot of value out of your work if they're just interested in life. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you again so much for having me. I'm stoked to do this again. This was so fun.
It'll definitely be a really fun round 2. Appreciate you.
All right, man. Enjoy the rest of your day.